So I have a question. Say, for example, one of the listeners then has your device and they measure their HRV and they say, okay, they go in on Google and for Google for their age, their HRV should be X, but their HRV is on the floor. Should
Mhm.
that person then, what approach do you think is best for that person? Because they know themselves, they're after looking at Google, and now there's this thing that, Jesus, I'm almost dead. My HRV is not where it
Right.
should be. What do I do
Right.
there? What does that person do?
Yes. Very good question. First things first, right? Don't go to Dr.
Mm.
Google. Don't go to Dr. Wikipedia. And easier said than done. We have access to all this information, but sometimes too, we have to leave it to people, who are experts in that field to be the interpreters of that information. So what I would say to this is that when it comes to heart rate variability, there are normative. Let's say this is the best way to put it. There are norms because that data have been collected, but there should never be a normative comparison. And the reason being is because norms doesn't tell the full story. Norms just says, hey, this is kind of where it falls for, an average of people within whatever your age group or your gender or whatever it may be that we're comparing to. That's all a norm's giving you, but it doesn't provide a level of interpretation. What we know is that there are so many confounding variables as to why HRV or as to what impacts HRV. Things like genetics, things like height, weight, cardiorespiratory fitness, gender, even. All of these things factor in. I mean, males naturally have a higher HRV than females. There are individuals who are taller who have higher HRVs than those who are shorter. Does that mean that they have better stress response, better cardiorespiratory fitness? Absolutely not. And there can be genetic components as well. What we really need to compare to is not say, hey, my aspiration is to be within my normative age. I've seen that, those who are 40 to 45, like have an average RMSSD of, 35. The whole goal or notion shouldn't be to get there, which is different than other biometrics, by the way. There are some biometrics that kind of make sense. I mean, for people to kind of strive to be within their normative range. But this is not one of them because of, again, all of those confounding variables. My take on this is that the end goal really is to find out where is your normal range, where do you fluctuate, which is what our app does. And then once you find that, to stay within that range. The goal is not to say, let me see how high I can boost it. There are ways to do that, but I think that you miss a lot when your intention is to only try to raise your baseline HRV. I think you are going to be really disappointed if you do that. But if your intention is to say, I want to gain better stress resiliency, I want to perform better, or whatever it may be that your goal is, you can utilize HRV as a good proxy. And more so, how well can you modulate HRV? So how well can you fluctuate HRV with breathing? Because that's more of a demonstration of autonomic control. How much control does your breath have on your nervous system is indicative by fluctuations up in an upward direction of HRV. Now, you may see it and very likely see it come back down to where you started. And that's okay. That's your normal range. That's where you function at. Breathing alone isn't necessarily going to move significantly that baseline needle if you do one practice. It's not like, oh, I raised my HRV from 25 to 50 and now I'm going to have that throughout the rest of my day. That's not the way HRV works. That's not the way, a cardiorespiratory system works. So the end goal, again, is to say, how well can I utilize it as a proxy and how well can I move that needle compared to my own numbers? So in the end, the net of this is self-comparison over normative comparison all day, every day. And maybe we'll find something in the literature down the road that tells us otherwise. But right now we have no evidence to say that there's any mechanism for the utilization of normative comparison that need be had. Does that help to explain that?
Oh, totally. I think it's great.
Yeah, good. Awesome. Thanks for listening to the Hanu Health Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show. This podcast would not happen without listeners and supporters like you.
And the best way to support us and the show is to head on over to iTunes and provide us with a 5-star review. This helps us reach others and spread the good word of breathing and stress resiliency. If we read your 5-star review on air, please reach out to podcast@hanuhealth.com with your name and mailing address, and we will send you some sweet Hanu gear. Until next time, breathe better and stress less.